Marriage is supposed to be sacred, a peaceful refuge we all hope to find. But for some stars, especially in the blinding glare of fame, that dream turns into a nightmare. In Hollywood, not all love stories have happy endings. Some unravel into chaos, heartbreak, and betrayal, where wives didn't just break vows, they shattered lives. Behind the glamorous red carpets and perfect smiles, these 15 black male celebrities faced devastating downfalls. They had it all: money, fame, and legions of fans. But then came marriages that spiraled into emotional war zones, where love turned toxic and betrayal hit like a wrecking ball. Some of these men were left broken, and barely recognizable. These aren't just failed marriages, they're cautionary tales that shook the very heart of Hollywood. Ray Charles, a 22-year marriage that ended in betrayal and nearly destroyed him. Ray Charles wasn't just a soul music icon, he was a musical revolutionary, blending gospel, blues, and jazz into timeless classics like I Got a Woman and Georgia on My Mind. With his unforgettable voice and unmatched talent, Ray conquered the world stage. But behind the music, behind the sunglasses and the spotlight, lay a painful secret, a love story that turned into one of the deepest wounds of his life. In the mid-1950s, just as Ray's star began to rise, he met Delatrice. They married in 1955 and looked from the outside like the picture of success: 3 sons, a stable home, and a man on top of the world. While Ray toured and built his empire, Della held down the home front. But behind closed doors, things were falling apart. By the late 60s, while Ray was constantly on the road, whispers began to swirl. And then came the devastating blow: Della was allegedly having an affair with someone from Ray's own crew. It wasn't just tabloid gossip. Industry insiders, including the legendary Quincy Jones, later confirmed the shocking betrayal. From that point on, their marriage spiraled into silent resentment, jealousy, arguments, mistrust, all hidden beneath a polished public image. And the betrayal didn't stop there. Della's spending habits had already put a strain on Ray's finances. Designer clothes, luxury vacations, extravagant furniture. She lived like royalty while Ray juggled fame, business pressure, and personal chaos. The final blow came in 1977. Their 22-year marriage collapsed in a brutal divorce that stripped Ray of more than love, it drained his fortune. Della walked away with custody of their children, a sprawling Los Angeles mansion, and nearly $1 million, an enormous sum at the time. For a man already facing financial storms in the 1970s, it was a staggering loss. Many who knew them were stunned. How could the woman who stood silently beside him for 2 decades strike so coldly in the end? Ray eventually rebuilt his life and career, earning back the world's respect. But the scars of that marriage never fully healed. What was supposed to be his sanctuary became one of the darkest, most painful chapters in his legacy. Sam Cooke, a soul legend betrayed by love, greed, and tragedy. Sam Cooke's voice could melt the hardest hearts, a gospel-trained tenor who brought soul to the mainstream with timeless hits like You Send Me. He wasn't just a singer, he was a revolutionary force, opening doors for black artists and becoming a symbol of elegance, talent, and hope. But behind the spotlight, Sam's life unraveled in a whirlwind of betrayal, scandal, and sorrow no love song could mask. In 1958, Sam married Barbara Campbell in what many thought was the fairy tale ending to a romance that mirrored his lyrics. His father, a minister, officiated the ceremony in Chicago. They had 3 children. From the outside, they were the perfect family. But as Sam's fame exploded, so did the cracks behind the curtain. Constant touring, temptation, and whispers of infidelity followed him like shadows. Yet Barbara had secrets of her own, an affair with a local bartender that remained hidden, until the funeral. When Sam was gunned down at the Hacienda Motel in December 1964, the music world mourned. But at the funeral, jaws dropped. The bartender boldly arrived wearing Sam's ring and watch, a silent scandal that shook the Cooke family to its core. And the betrayal only deepened. Just 77 days after Sam's death, Barbara married Bobby Womack, Sam's friend, mentee, and musical protege. Not only that, Bobby walked down the aisle in Sam's clothes. The Cooke family was outraged. Sam's brothers beat Bobby publicly. The industry recoiled. Fans were horrified. What once was a respected widow was now seen as the woman who betrayed a legend. Then came the money. Barbara seized control of Sam's business holdings, including his music rights. The Cooke family accused her of diverting profits to herself and Bobby, leaving Sam's children with scraps of an empire their father built. But the final act in this dark opera came in 1970. Barbara, still living with Bobby, discovered something unthinkable. He was having an affair with her teenage daughter from a previous relationship. In a rage, Barbara grabbed a gun and shot him. He survived, barely. Their marriage ended on the spot. Barbara spent the rest of her life in the shadow of controversy, surrounded by broken trust, legal feuds, and public shame. And so, the life of Sam Cooke, a man who sang of hope, faith, and love, became one of the most haunting tales of betrayal and destruction in music history. O.J. Simpson, a love story that turned into America's darkest nightmare. O.J. Simpson was once the golden boy of America, a football legend, a movie star, a man who had it all. His charm lit up stadiums and silver screens alike. But behind the smile and celebrity, his private world was spiraling toward tragedy, a tragedy that would eventually shake the entire nation. It began in 1977, inside a high-end Beverly Hills nightclub. Nicole Brown, just 18, working as a waitress, caught O.J.'s eye, even though he was still married. Within months, he left his first wife and chased Nicole with the passion of a man used to winning. 7 years later, they were married. On the outside, it looked like a fairy tale: 2 beautiful children, a mansion in Brentwood, lavish parties, money flowing like champagne. But behind the walls, it was a war zone. Fights, broken glass, police calls. Nicole once called 911 after O.J. slammed her against a wall. She admitted she hit him too. Love had long turned into poison. Resentment, jealousy, and violence filled their home. They were locked in a twisted dance, not of passion but of pain. And then came betrayal. Nicole had an affair with Marcus Allen, O.J.'s close friend and teammate. That was the spark that lit the final fuse. O.J. unraveled. He stalked her, sent threats, couldn't move on. Nicole drowned herself in shopping sprees, parties, and demands for more money. Even after the divorce in 1992, O.J. sent her $1,000 a month, while lawsuits and debt drained his fortune. Friends said he felt used, humiliated, trapped. But he couldn't let go. Not of Nicole. Not of the idea that she still belonged to him. Then, in 1994, the unthinkable happened. Nicole and her friend Ron Goldman were found murdered in cold blood, a scene so gruesome it stopped the country in its tracks. O.J. went from American icon to prime suspect overnight. The trial of the century followed: cameras, chaos, and controversy. He was acquitted in criminal court, but not in the public eye. The civil court hit him with $33.5 million in damages. His reputation? Destroyed. His money? Gone. Nicole's death didn't just end a toxic marriage, it detonated a man's legacy. O.J. Simpson fell from the mountaintop of fame into the abyss, a symbol not of glory, but of how far a man can fall when love turns into obsession, and obsession into tragedy. James Brown, a love drenched in chaos, addiction, and a tragic final blow. James Brown, the undisputed godfather of funk, lit up the world with his electric moves, raw voice, and revolutionary sound. He didn't just change music, he rewired it. But behind the glittering lights and iconic stage screams was a private life unraveling in silence and shadows. And at the center of it all was his fiery, doomed marriage to Adrienne Rodriguez. In 1984, Brown married Adrienne, a striking woman who worked behind the scenes of his shows. She wasn't just beautiful, she was magnetic. But from the very beginning, their relationship was a ticking time bomb. There were no children, just endless drama. The couple plunged headfirst into a world of late-night parties, heavy drug use, and explosive tempers. Friends said they were like fire meeting gasoline, destined to burn everything around them. By 1988, both were arrested for drug possession. Adrienne had spiraled deep into addiction, while Brown, already battling paranoia, began to unravel. Their once lavish home became a war zone. Screams piercing the night, furniture flying, police visits becoming routine. Adrienne often called the cops, accusing Brown of violence, only to face assault charges herself later. The love they shared twisted into mutual destruction. And it wasn't just the drugs. Adrienne's spending habits were out of control. Designer clothes, diamonds, non-stop salon visits. She was hemorrhaging money while James faced mounting lawsuits, unpaid taxes, and crumbling finances. Their fortune vanished into boutiques and champagne-soaked Hollywood nights, while their souls quietly starved. By the mid-90s, the empire was collapsing. James was arrested again, his health in freefall, his spirit crushed. They were no longer husband and wife, they were two haunted figures, ghosts in their own story. Then came the final blow. In 1996, Adrienne died during a failed cosmetic surgery. Some whispered her body couldn't survive the years of addiction and mental torment. Her death closed one of the darkest chapters in James Brown's life, but it didn't erase the pain. It only deepened the mystery. Would his fall from grace have been less brutal if they'd never married? Could the legend have lived lighter, freer? Fans will always remember James Brown for his groundbreaking music, but they'll also remember the chaos that clung to him, the woman who walked beside him into the storm, and the love that may have cost him everything. Quincy Jones, a musical genius betrayed by love. Quincy Jones wasn't just a hitmaker, he was a force of nature. The mastermind behind Michael Jackson's Thriller and Frank Sinatra's Finest Hours. A trailblazer who broke down racial barriers in music and opened the floodgates for generations of black talent to shine. But behind the Grammys and gold records was a personal story of heartbreak, one that nearly broke him. In 1974, at the height of his fame, Quincy met Peggy Lipton, a rising white actress basking in the glow of Mod Squad fame. To the world, they were a power couple, the king of sound and a Hollywood starlet. They married quickly and had 2 daughters, Kadida and Rashida, building what looked like a dream life. But that dream was laced with quiet destruction. Peggy brought more than paparazzi and red carpets. She brought luxury without limits, designer labels, lavish parties, oceanside mansions. Quincy, already pouring millions into music ventures, suddenly had to bankroll a lifestyle that rivaled royalty. Still, it wasn't the money that shattered him. It was the betrayal. By the late 80s, as Quincy struggled to keep his empire from financial collapse, whispers turned into confirmation. Peggy was having an affair with a co-star. The rumors weren't just tabloid fodder, his closest confidants knew it was real. It cut deeper than any headline. This was the man who built legacies, reduced to silence by a broken heart. Quincy didn't fight it publicly. He didn't make a scene. He filed for divorce in 1990, quietly, painfully. But the damage was massive. Peggy walked away with an estimated $5 million and ownership of prime assets. Just like that, a large part of Quincy's hard-earned fortune was gone. For over 15 years, he had loved, sacrificed, and believed in a marriage that slowly drained him from the inside. Some say the betrayal wasn't just financial. It stripped him of trust, peace, and belief in the kind of love he once wrote songs about. It took Quincy years to rebuild what he lost, not just his wealth, but his spirit. And while his music continues to echo across generations, one truth remains. The woman who once seemed like his perfect match ended up costing him more than anyone else ever had. Gary Coleman, a child star's rise, a haunting marriage, and a tragic end. Gary Coleman was once the most beloved child in America. With his unforgettable role on Different Strokes, he lit up millions of living rooms, earning fame, fortune, and adoration few could dream of. But behind the laughter was a storm quietly building. As he grew older, Gary's health declined, his money vanished in lawsuits and betrayal, and Hollywood turned its back. Then came Shannon Price, a woman nearly 20 years his junior, who walked into his life in 2006 on the set of Church Ball. At first, she seemed like hope. Instead, she became his final heartbreak. They married in 2007, just months after meeting, but the fairy tale unraveled instantly. Within a year, they divorced. Yet Shannon didn't leave. She stayed in his home, clinging to his fading fame as his common-law wife in Utah, while Gary, sick and broke, struggled to survive. Their relationship was no love story, it was a slow-burning tragedy. They screamed at each other on national TV in a brutal divorce court episode. Gary confessed to deep anger issues. Shannon accused him of being a burden. Behind closed doors, things were even darker. Friends and neighbors said they saw Shannon slap him in public. While hospitalized, Gary reportedly begged for a restraining order, accusing her of abuse. They slept in separate rooms. She openly professed love for another man, while living under Gary's roof, eating from his empty wallet. Then came the final blow. In 2010, Gary fell down the stairs and suffered a fatal brain hemorrhage. Critically injured, he asked for 2 weeks of life support. But just 2 days later, Shannon signed the order to end it. In her 911 call, she sounded distressed, but refused to stay at the scene because, as she said, there's blood everywhere. Friends were stunned. Many believed she gave up too fast. After Gary's death, Shannon's betrayal only deepened. She tried to claim his estate using an old handwritten will, despite their divorce. The court threw it out, citing her long history of manipulation. Then, she secretly sold graphic hospital photos of Gary's final moments to tabloids, for tens of thousands of dollars. The public was outraged. Hollywood was horrified. Gary Coleman died with just a few $1,000s to his name. No legacy. No justice. Just a memory tainted by the woman he once called his wife. The heartbreaking truth? Gary never escaped that marriage. Not in life. Not in death. Marvin Gaye, a marriage that dragged the Soul King to hell and back. Marvin Gaye, the velvet-voiced genius behind What's Going On and Let's Get It On, lived a life that soared on stage, but behind closed doors, he was trapped in one of the most toxic marriages in music history. In 1963, he married Anna Gordy, nearly 2 decades his senior and the powerful sister of Motown founder Berry Gordy. At first glance, it looked like a dream union, a rising star and a woman with deep pockets and deeper connections. But the reality was a nightmare. What began as love quickly turned into a battlefield. Anna lived large, luxury cars, lavish homes, spending Marvin's hard-earned money as if it were her own. While Marvin poured his soul into the studio, Anna controlled the purse strings and the power at home. Their marriage became a cold war, filled with silent punishments, emotional manipulation, and public smiles that masked private destruction. By the late 60s, Marvin was unraveling. Anna had taken up with another man. Marvin spiraled into loneliness and drugs, still clinging to a love that had long since curdled. The couple adopted a son, Marvin Gaye III, but the shocking truth was that he wasn't their biological child. He was born to Denise Gordy, Anna's own niece. It was a cover-up, a lie buried in the name of saving face. In 1977, after 14 grueling years, the marriage imploded. But the divorce was just the beginning of Marvin's descent. Anna came for everything, demanding over $1 million, plus royalties from his biggest hits. Broken, Marvin had no choice but to write Here, My Dear, an entire album of raw bitterness, heartbreak and pain, just to pay her off. After the split, Marvin's life spiraled into chaos. The drugs got worse, the money disappeared, and the career that once lit up the world dimmed into shadows. Many believe Anna Gordy didn't just break Marvin's heart, she cracked the very foundation of his soul. And when Marvin's own father pulled the trigger in 1984, ending his life just one day before his 45th birthday, the world didn't just lose a legend. It finally glimpsed the cost of the torment he carried. Behind every smooth note was a scream the world refused to hear, until it was far too late. Smokey Robinson, a 27-year marriage that played like a heartbreaking ballad. Smokey Robinson, Motown's golden voice, the soulful architect behind timeless hits like Cruisin' and Tracks of My Tears, didn't just create music, he helped define a generation. As the frontman of the Miracles, he embodied smooth charm and lyrical genius. But behind the curtain, his personal life was unraveling in a slow-motion tragedy that stretched nearly 3 decades. In 1959, he married Claudette Rogers, his bandmate and Motown's first lady. To the world, they were a fairy tale couple, singing side by side, building an empire of sound together. But the reality was anything but romantic. Their 27-year marriage was a tangled knot of emotional distance, bitter silence, infidelity, and quiet betrayals. As Smokey's fame soared, Claudette began to indulge in a lavish lifestyle: luxury cars, designer wardrobes, extravagant vacations. All of it financed by Smokey, who was juggling the pressures of stardom and fatherhood. The money began disappearing, and so did their connection. By the early 1980s, Smokey's suspicions quietly grew. Whispers floated through Motown's inner circles, rumors of Claudette's involvement with someone else in the business. No names were confirmed, but the damage was done. Their home turned cold. Smiles for the press masked silent dinners and distant stares. Even their 2 children couldn't keep the family from crumbling. In 1986, the marriage ended, not with public fireworks, but with a quiet, devastating split. Claudette walked away with $3 million and a piece of Smokey's royalty rights from the Miracles. His blood, sweat and soul, now partially gone. Smokey never spoke publicly about the divorce. But those close to him saw the toll. His light dimmed. His fortune shrank. Fans blamed the industry, but insiders knew he had stayed in a beautiful prison too long, trapped by loyalty, image, and secrets that festered in silence. Claudette disappeared from the spotlight, her story ending in quiet luxury. But Smokey remained, his music still echoing, his legacy intact, yet forever shadowed by a love story that began with harmony and ended in heartbreak. Muhammad Ali, the knockout that didn't come from the ring. He was the greatest. A global icon. A man who danced like a butterfly, stung like a bee, and shook the world not just with his fists, but with his fire, his faith, and his fearlessness. Muhammad Ali was untouchable in the ring, a heavyweight champion who defied the odds and defined a generation. But behind the roar of the crowds and the glint of gold belts, there was a short-lived love story that hit harder than any opponent ever could. It all began in 1964. Ali, fresh off his earth-shaking victory over Sonny Liston, met Sanjay Roy, a striking, free-spirited black model with confidence as bold as his own. The chemistry was instant. They married just months later in a whirlwind romance that dazzled the tabloids. But what looked like a power couple soon unraveled into chaos. From the beginning, cracks showed. Sanjay clashed with Ali's deep devotion to Islam and the strict expectations of the Nation of Islam. She refused to change her lifestyle, glamorous, headstrong, independent, and wouldn't bend to Ali's rigid religious and cultural rules. Though they shared a home, they lived in separate worlds. While Ali was consumed with training, public speaking, and defending his beliefs, Sanjay lived lavishly. shopping, traveling and partying, running up massive bills under Ali's name. And then came the whispers, rumors of an affair with a well-known sports figure. No names confirmed, but Ali's inner circle believed the betrayal was real. Then in 1966, as Ali's life spiraled, stripped of his championship, condemned for refusing the Vietnam draft, and branded a traitor, Sanji struck the final blow. She filed for divorce and walked away with a generous settlement. Ali was left shattered, his title gone, his spirit bruised, and his trust broken. Sanji disappeared from public view, barely remembered by fans. But to those who truly knew Ali, her exit marked one of the darkest chapters in his life. Yet even in heartbreak, the champ stood tall. Ali would rise again, marry again, and carve out a legacy that transcended sport, politics and pain. As for Sanji, she faded into history, a footnote tied forever to the heartbreak of a legend who gave the world everything. And for a time, lost everything. Lionel Richie, a marriage drenched in fame, fury, and fallout. Lionel Richie, the voice that serenaded the world with All Night Long, the smooth hitmaker who rose from the Commodores to solo superstardom. On stage, he was a global icon with timeless charm. But off stage? His personal life was a powder keg of betrayal, scandal, and emotional warfare. It all began in 1975, when Richie fell for Brenda Harvey at Tuskegee University. She was a bright, ambitious black music student. He was a rising star with dreams bigger than the stage. They married, adopted Nicole Richie, and seemed like the perfect power couple. But behind the designer smiles and red carpet photos, their home life was spiraling into chaos. As Lionel's fame exploded, so did the cracks in their marriage. Endless tours, late-night temptations, and whispered affairs turned their once-loving bond into a battlefield. But it all came to a head in 1988, when Brenda caught Lionel with his mistress, Diane Alexander. The confrontation turned violent. Brenda was arrested outside Diane's Beverly Hills apartment after a wild altercation that made headlines nationwide. Assault. Domestic violence. Disorderly conduct. The tabloids had a feeding frenzy. The LA Times splashed it across the front page. The Richies were no longer Hollywood royalty, they were a cautionary tale. Their divorce in 1993 was just as explosive. Brenda walked away with millions, luxury cars, fashion, and a Hollywood lifestyle funded by Lionel's hits. Insiders say she knew exactly how to wield her power, and wasn't shy about spending every dime. For Lionel, the aftermath was brutal. He faced massive legal bills, child custody battles, and a creative slump that stalled his momentum. The once squeaky clean star now wore the scars of a marriage undone by infidelity, ego, and rage. Some fans blamed Brenda for the chaos. Others sympathized with her fury. But one thing is clear, this wasn't just a breakup, it was a public unraveling of a golden couple. A marriage that began with love and music, and ended in headlines, handcuffs, and heartbreak. Behind the glittering lights of Lionel Richie's career lies a chapter he rarely speaks of, a reminder that even legends have demons dancing in the shadows. Miles Davis, a stormy love, shattered dreams, and the secrets behind the jazz icon. Miles Davis wasn't just a jazz legend, he was a force of nature. A genius who redefined music with every breath of his horn, his sound hypnotized the world. But behind the cool swagger and revolutionary rhythms was a man haunted by chaos, especially in love. His marriage to actress Cicely Tyson, once hailed as a union of black royalty, was anything but serene. They married in 1981, two towering figures drawn together by art, fame, and perhaps fate. To the outside world, they were the ultimate power couple. But behind closed doors, their lives unraveled in a storm of addiction, betrayal, and emotional scars. Davis, long battling substance abuse, clashed with Tyson's disciplined lifestyle. Their differences weren't just in habits. They were in values, in trust, in pain that had no place to go. Biographers later revealed a hidden wound, Tyson's alleged affair with a Hollywood director in the 80s, something Davis never truly forgave. The rift widened. With no children to bond them, the marriage turned cold, then cruel. By 1988, the inevitable came, a bitter divorce. Tyson walked away with an estimated $2 million, plus hundreds of thousands more spent on fashion, luxury travel, and lavish art patronage. Expenses that drained Davis during a time when his health and finances were already unraveling. Oddly enough, some credit her for helping him get clean. During his darkest battles, she stood by him, at least for a time, offering structure and strength when he had none. But the cost was immense. Emotional wreckage that neither fame nor fortune could mend. By the end of the 80s, the man who once ruled jazz stages worldwide was left nursing more than broken finances. He was carrying the loneliness of a love that collapsed under the weight of two powerful souls at war. A final act filled not with applause, but with silence. Hank Aaron, a baseball titan, a broken home, and the silent cost of greatness. Hank Aaron wasn't just a baseball hero, he was a symbol of perseverance, breaking Babe Ruth's home run record and forever etching his name into the fabric of American sports history. But while the world cheered from the stands, behind closed doors, his life was unraveling. At the heart of the storm was his nearly 18-year marriage to Barbara Lucas, a union once seen as picture-perfect, but ultimately shattered by betrayal, scandal, and heartbreak. They met in Jacksonville, before fame fully claimed him. Together they built a family with 4 children, and for years, they stood as the model of stability. But by the late 1960s, just as Hank was facing the most racially charged and dangerous chapter of his career, chasing down Ruth's sacred record, his personal life was crumbling. Friends close to the couple whispered about Barbara's infidelity, an affair with a man from their own community that shattered Hank's trust at the worst possible moment. And the damage didn't stop there. Barbara was also accused of excessive spending, designer clothes, luxurious homes, and costly habits that drained Hank's hard-earned fortune. The financial strain was suffocating. In 1971, just as death threats and racial hate letters flooded in, Barbara walked away, leaving Hank alone in his darkest hour. The divorce was a quiet headline, but in the baseball world, it was a scandal. Teammates and insiders didn't hold back, accusing her of abandoning a man who was fighting not just for a record, but for history. The emotional toll was heavy. Nights without sleep, a house without peace, and a heart bruised by betrayal. Yet through it all, Hank didn't falter. In 1974, he swung his way into legend, smashing his 715th home run and rewriting history. But behind the applause, behind the crown, was a man who had paid dearly for every cheer. Everyone remembers Hank Aaron's triumph. Few know the lonely, painful sacrifices that came with it. Al Green, a soul legend undone by a mercenary marriage. Al Green, the velvet-voiced icon behind timeless hits like Let's Stay Together, ruled the soul charts of the 1970s. He wasn't just a singer, he was a movement, with blockbuster albums and millions of fans who felt every note he sang. But behind the music, his personal life spiraled into chaos, especially his turbulent marriage to Shirley Kiles, a union that would leave scars on both his heart and career. They married in 1977, just as Al stood at the peak of his stardom. Shirley, a woman he'd known since the early 70s, seemed to be a steady presence. But what started as romance quickly turned into something darker, driven not by love, but by control and money. The marriage was stormy, marked by emotional upheaval and whispered accusations. By 1983, with Al's career shifting toward gospel and his fame fading, Shirley filed for divorce, right as Al was drowning in lawsuits and financial decline. The fallout was brutal. Shirley walked away with $432,800 in alimony and child support, a staggering blow to a man already reeling. Friends like producer Willie Mitchell called it a financial ambush that nearly broke him. Yet from that wreckage, Al found salvation in gospel. His soul bruised but not broken, he rose again, this time singing not for fame, but for faith. Dennis Rodman and Carmen Electra, a wild marriage fueled by chaos, lust, and self-destruction. Dennis Rodman, NBA's flamboyant bad boy with gravity-defying rebounds and headline-grabbing antics, lived his life as loudly off the court as he did on it. And nothing screamed chaos louder than his whirlwind marriage to Baywatch bombshell Carmen Electra. It all began in 1998, when sparks ignited at a wild LA party. Within months, they were married in a haze of infatuation, alcohol, and fame. But what glittered on the surface was pure madness underneath. Their union, which lasted just 6 stormy months, was anything but romantic. No children came from it, only chaos, scandal, and bruised reputations. One of the most explosive moments came just months after they tied the knot. In a Newport Beach hotel, fueled by booze and rage, Rodman and Electra erupted into a violent shouting match that ended with police arrests. Carmen allegedly scratched and shoved Dennis. The media feasted on the story, ESPN, tabloids, talk shows, painting their love not as a fairy tale, but as a fiery train wreck. Behind the drama was a financial nightmare. Carmen's love for designer clothes, diamond jewelry, and extravagant getaways came at a time when Rodman's NBA earnings were dwindling. The bills soared into the hundreds of thousands. Her lavish lifestyle pushed Rodman deeper into debt and emotional collapse. By 1999, the inevitable divorce hit like a wrecking ball. Rodman paid a steep settlement to walk away. Their brief, toxic romance became a cautionary tale, a love story drenched in passion, addiction, violence, and ruin. To this day, their relationship remains a symbol of how fame, lust, and recklessness can turn even the brightest stars into tragic headlines. Eddie Murphy, a 13-year marriage built on dreams, destroyed by betrayal. Eddie Murphy, the king of comedy and box office gold with smash hits like Beverly Hills Cop and Coming to America, ruled Hollywood like few others. But while his career soared to the heavens, his personal life slowly crumbled behind closed doors. It all began at a glamorous 1988 NAACP event, where Eddie met Nicole, a radiant beauty who seemed like the perfect match. By 1993, they had tied the knot, becoming one of Hollywood's most envied power couples. 5 children, red carpets, and picture-perfect moments followed. To the world, they were unbreakable. But behind the cameras, cracks were spreading. Eddie's packed filming schedule kept him away for weeks, sometimes months. And in that space, temptation crept in. Nicole, feeling abandoned, allegedly found comfort in the arms of a Hollywood producer. By 2005, the tabloids exploded with rumors, and insiders confirmed the whispers. The fairy tale was shattered. Their 2006 divorce was ugly, bitter, and costly. Nicole walked away with a jaw-dropping $15 million settlement and nearly $5,000 a month in support. And as Eddie's career took hits, with box office flops like The Adventures of Pluto Nash, the financial blow cut deep. But what stunned fans most wasn't the divorce itself, it was what came after. Nicole's lavish spending made headlines. Chanel shopping sprees, Gucci everything, luxury homes, and jet-setting across the globe like royalty. Eddie's fortune became her playground, and the media tore into her for it. Eddie's story is more than just another celebrity breakup, it's a painful reminder that even the brightest stars can fall. Behind the laughter and fame was a man struggling to keep his family, his fortune, and his identity intact. A marriage that began in love ended in extravagance and heartbreak. Today, Eddie continues to work, rebuild and rise, haunted by a past that money and fame couldn't protect him from. So what do you think? Can even the richest stars escape heartbreak? Have you seen love stories like this play out in real life? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more untold stories behind the Hollywood spotlight, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell. You won't want to miss what's coming next. They've walked the red carpet, built lives together, and quietly broke barriers long before the world was ready to applaud them. These celebrity couples didn't just find love, they redefined it in the shadows of Hollywood's spotlight. In today's video, we're celebrating 20 iconic LGBTQ+ love stories that not only survived the pressure of fame but helped transform the industry forever. But first, can you recognize the actor in this photo? He tied the knot with his longtime partner in Paris and starred in a cult favorite HBO series that still has fans talking. Drop your guess in the comments below. And if there's a couple you believe deserves their moment in the spotlight, tell us, we just might feature them next. You're watching Starscope, where hidden love stories are finally brought to light. Neil Patrick Harris and David Burtka. Neil Patrick Harris and David Burtka aren't just another Hollywood couple. They're a living testament to what queer love, commitment, and modern parenthood can look like in the spotlight. Their story began in 2004, when a chance meeting through mutual friends in New York sparked a quiet but powerful connection. At the time, Neil was still privately navigating his sexuality, and David had just come out of a previous relationship. What followed wasn't instant fireworks. It was a steady, heartfelt bond built on trust, laughter, and a shared sense of purpose. Neil's public coming out in 2006 wasn't some orchestrated PR moment. It was a bold response to growing media speculation. In his own words to People magazine, "I am a very content gay man living my life to the fullest." At a time when few A-list actors were openly gay, that simple, honest declaration echoed far beyond Hollywood. Yet, Neil's career never skipped a beat. His role as the famously womanizing Barney Stinson on How I Met Your Mother carried on with full fan support, proving that authenticity didn't have to come at the cost of success. In 2010, Neil and David embraced fatherhood, welcoming twins Gideon Scott and Harper Grace via surrogate. From day one, they've spoken openly and lovingly about the joys and challenges of raising children as a same-sex couple. Whether it's late-night feedings, airport meltdowns, or balancing work and home life, they've never hidden the realness behind the picture-perfect moments. Their openness has made them more than just stars, it's made them role models. When they finally tied the knot on September 6, 2014, in Perugia, Italy, it wasn't just a wedding, it was a celebration of love, family, and visibility. Surrounded by close friends and family, with a ceremony officiated by longtime collaborator Pamela Fryman and a surprise performance by Elton John, the moment was nothing short of magical. Together, Neil and David have used their fame not to elevate themselves, but to shine a light on the LGBTQ+ community. They've graced red carpets and magazine covers with joy and authenticity, while supporting causes like the Trevor Project and GLAAD. In a world obsessed with image, their honesty is their legacy. And in doing so, they've shown that love, true enduring love, needs no apology. Jesse Tyler Ferguson and Justin Mikita, a love story that redefined Hollywood's heart. When Jesse Tyler Ferguson first crossed paths with Justin Mikita at a friend's birthday party in 2010, neither imagined that a casual introduction would blossom into one of Hollywood's most celebrated same-sex love stories. Jesse, already a familiar face as Mitchell Pritchett on Modern Family and a vocal advocate for LGBTQ+ rights, found in Justin not only a romantic partner, but a fellow warrior for change. Then a driven law student, Justin shared Jesse's passion for equality, and together, they transformed that shared purpose into a lifelong mission. As their love story unfolded, so too did history. In 2012, with the fight for marriage equality reaching a fever pitch across America, the couple co-founded Tie the Knot, a bold non-profit that blended fashion with activism, selling designer bow ties to raise awareness and funds for LGBTQ+ rights. What started as a stylish statement soon turned into a movement, and by 2023, Tie the Knot had donated over $1 million to fuel the fight for equality. Later that same year, after New York legalized same-sex marriage, Jesse and Justin got engaged. On July 20, 2013, they said "I do" in a heartfelt ceremony in downtown Manhattan, officiated by none other than Tony Award-winning playwright Tony Kushner. Held at 82 Mercer, the wedding was a beautiful mix of elegance and intimacy, surrounded by family, close friends, and fellow advocates. But more than a celebration, it was a powerful symbol for a community that had fought so long to love freely and openly. In July 2020, their joy grew tenfold with the arrival of their son, Beckett Mercer Ferguson Mikita, born via surrogate. Parenthood, Jesse later shared, changed everything, reshaping how he viewed time, legacy, and what truly matters. Despite their fame, Jesse and Justin have chosen to keep family life sacred. They occasionally offer fans glimpses into their world, but always with care and privacy, especially when it comes to their son. Their story is more than a love story. It's a testament to the power of visibility, compassion, and quiet resilience. In a town often built on illusion, Jesse and Justin have built something real. One bow tie, one milestone, and one act of love at a time. Nathan Lane and Devlin Elliott, a love story built behind the curtain. Nathan Lane, Broadway's beloved master of wit and timing, has long dazzled audiences with his larger-than-life presence in hits like The Producers and The Birdcage. But offstage, his greatest role may be in a love story far more intimate and enduring: his quiet, steadfast partnership with Devlin Elliott. They first crossed paths in the early 1990s, but it wasn't until 2001 that their relationship truly took root. From the start, there was something unspoken yet undeniable between them. Devlin, a thoughtful and low-key theater producer and writer, chose the shadows of the industry while Nathan's name lit up marquees. Where Nathan brought thunder to the stage, Devlin brought calm behind it, grounded, supportive, and unwavering. Their bond grew slowly, not through spectacle but through shared moments, quiet strength, and deep respect. When Nathan came out publicly in 1999, shortly after the heartbreaking death of Matthew Shepard, he did so with courage and clarity. In a time when most actors of his stature stayed silent, Nathan's voice rang out. And through that defining moment, Devlin was right there by his side, not for the cameras, but for the man he loved. Their love was never a PR stunt. It was a refuge, real, private, and deeply rooted. After more than 20 years of partnership, they sealed their vows in a quiet ceremony on November 17, 2015, at New York City Hall. No flashing lights, no front-page features. Just two hearts, quietly promising forever. Because some of the strongest love stories aren't written in scripts or sung on stage, they're lived quietly, day by day, far from the spotlight. B.D. Wong and Richard Schnorr, a love story rooted in growth, laughter, and unshakable joy. B.D. Wong has spent decades captivating audiences with his range, from his Tony-winning performance in M. Butterfly to blockbuster hits like Jurassic Park and unforgettable roles in Mr. Robot and Law & Order, SVU. But behind the scenes, his most transformative role might just be the one he shares with digital marketing executive Richard Schnorr. A love story that began quietly but grew into something extraordinary. They met in 2010 at a singles mixer in New York City. The spark was immediate. BD, already a proud father and openly gay Asian American actor, had walked a complex path through Hollywood's often narrow expectations. Richard brought something different, a refreshing mix of humor, warmth, and steadiness that softened BD's edges and made space for something new: joy. After 8 years of building a life together, they married in 2018 in a chic but deeply personal Brooklyn ceremony. It wasn't about flash, it was about feeling. BD wore a tailored suit, Richard wore a smile that lit up the room, and their vows were filled with humor, depth, and an unmistakable respect for each other's individuality. Publicly, they're low-key. But when they do share glimpses, silly kitchen dance videos, tender anniversary messages, spontaneous travel snaps, it never feels curated. It feels real. Two people genuinely in love, still discovering joy in each other, every day. BD has spoken candidly about how Richard helped him reconnect with his sense of play, something he'd lost after years of navigating Hollywood as a queer man of color. Richard, in turn, calls BD the most principled, compassionate man he's ever known. Together, they're rewriting the narrative of love after 50, not as a slowing down, but as a deepening. A partnership that's vibrant, evolving, and full of laughter. In 2022, BD performed a dazzling drag number at a charity gala, with Richard beaming in the front row. It wasn't just a performance, it was a celebration. Of freedom. Of love. Of living out loud, no matter your age. For years, Victor Garber let his roles do the talking. Whether it was Titanic, Alias, Legally Blonde, or Godspell on Broadway, he remained a commanding presence on screen and stage, while keeping his personal life gently out of the spotlight. But behind the scenes stood a quiet, unwavering constant, Canadian artist and former model Rainer Andre, the man who had been his partner in life and creativity since the late 1990s. At a time when most actors, especially those cast in straight romantic leads, felt unsafe being openly gay, Victor and Rainer built something extraordinary, away from the public eye. Their silence wasn't shame, it was grace. Garber once told the Globe and Mail in 2012, "I don't really talk about it, but everybody knows." It was his way of saying, love doesn't need a spotlight to be real. Rainer, with his soulful paintings and calm artistic spirit, brought balance to Victor's hectic Hollywood pace. They shared more than just a nationality. They shared a deep love for the arts, introspection, and each other. Rainer's portrait work, often praised for its emotional depth, seemed to echo the same quiet intensity found in Garber's performances. In 2015, after more than 16 years together, they were married in a private ceremony on the misty shores of Tofino, British Columbia. There was no headline, no magazine deal, just an understated Instagram post from Rainer, "Yes, we did." And in those 4 words lived an entire love story. They don't walk every red carpet. They don't need to. But in the rare glimpses, vacations in Italy, a night at the Met Opera, you see a bond rooted not in celebrity, but in something far rarer, time, trust, and quiet devotion. Their story reminds us that sometimes, the most beautiful love lives off stage. John Barrowman and Scott Gill, a love story that defies time and spotlight. John Barrowman, the vibrant Scottish-American actor known for stealing scenes in Doctor Who and Torchwood, has always lived out loud, bold, joyful, and unapologetically himself. But behind the energy and charisma stands Scott Gill, a quiet force of calm who's been his anchor for over 30 years. Their story began in 1991, after a theatre performance in London. Barrowman was starring in Rope, and Scott, an architect attending with friends, was instantly drawn in, not just to the performance, but to the man behind it. What followed was a spark that turned into a flame, fast, fierce, and filled with laughter, intelligence, and a rare kind of emotional chemistry. Within months, they were inseparable, living together and building a life few get to experience. Through career shifts, international moves, and Barrowman's rise to sci-fi icon status, their bond only grew stronger. In 2008, they entered into a civil partnership in the UK, and when marriage equality reached California, they said "I do" again in an intimate Los Angeles ceremony in 2013. Barrowman marked the moment on Twitter with pure joy, "We are now legally married. Thanks for all your great wishes, JB and Scott." What sets them apart isn't just the longevity, it's the love they so openly share. Whether it's travel vlogs, home projects, or silly kitchen dance-offs, Barrowman gives fans an unfiltered look into a relationship that's equal parts fun and fiercely loyal. Scott, the more reserved of the two, may not always steal the camera, but his soft smile and quiet presence speak volumes. They've even collaborated on stage, with Scott playing the straight man to John's over-the-top showmanship in various performances and specials. Their chemistry, playful, affectionate, and grounded in mutual respect, has made them more than just a couple in the public eye. They're symbols of enduring love. In 2020, the pair renewed their vows in sunny Palm Springs, celebrating nearly 3 decades together. A rare feat in any world, let alone Hollywood. For Barrowman, whose life has always been lived in the spotlight, Scott Gill remains the steady heartbeat behind the brilliance, the calm in the chaos, and the home in the storm. Dan Bucatinsky and Dawn Roos, a Hollywood love story that defied the odds. In a town where love often fades under the spotlight, Dan Bucatinsky and Dawn Roos have quietly built one of Hollywood's most enduring partnerships. One rooted not in glitz and gossip, but in creativity, commitment, and the courage to live authentically. Bucatinsky, best known for his Emmy-winning turn as James Novak on Scandal, is a multi-hyphenate talent, actor, screenwriter, producer, while Dawn Roos, the sharp mind behind films like The Opposite of Sex and Bounce, has long been admired for his bold storytelling and emotional depth. They met in the early 1990s, when being openly gay in Hollywood, especially behind the scenes, was still taboo. Dan was expressive, witty, and emotionally open. Dawn, by contrast, more reserved, cerebral, and dryly funny. But their connection was instant. What began as a creative spark turned into a lifelong bond, forged through mutual respect, razor-sharp humor, and a shared passion for telling stories that matter. Long before same-sex marriage was legal nationwide, Dan and Dawn said, "I do" in California in 2008, after already spending more than a decade side by side. Together, they've raised 2 adopted children, Eliza and Jonah, an experience Dan shares with heart and humor in his acclaimed memoir, Does This Baby Make Me Look Straight? A raw and hilarious glimpse into the joys and chaos of modern fatherhood. Though they rarely seek the limelight, their influence behind the camera has been profound. From co-creating HBO's The Comeback with Lisa Kudrow to producing and directing it together, their creative fingerprints are all over some of television's most nuanced and quietly groundbreaking moments. In a world obsessed with fast fame and fleeting love, Dan Bucatinsky and Dawn Roos remind us that the most powerful stories are sometimes the ones lived off-screen, with honesty, longevity, and love. Mario Contoni and Jerry Dixon. Mario Contoni is famous for his electrifying comedy, his unforgettable role as Anthony Marantino in Sex and the City, and his unmistakable flair on stage. But behind the rapid-fire jokes and theatrical charisma stands the steady presence of Jerry Dixon, an accomplished actor, writer, and director whose quiet strength has been Mario's creative partner and emotional anchor for over 3 decades. Their story began in 1991, during a modest theater workshop in New York City, a fitting backdrop for a connection built on art, authenticity, and shared ambition. At the time, both were hustling actors navigating the city's demanding stage scene, a world that wasn't always kind to openly gay performers. While Mario embraced the spotlight with his signature boldness, coming out long before it was safe or trendy, Jerry thrived behind the curtain, grounding their relationship with a calm that perfectly balanced Mario's fire. There were no red carpets in the early days. Just long rehearsals, late-night conversations, and a powerful alignment of values. That quiet foundation, not publicity, is what made their love endure. Over the years, their public appearances have been rare but radiant, always marked by an effortless warmth and unmistakable bond. In 2011, after 2 decades of devotion, they made it official, marrying in New York shortly after the state legalized same-sex marriage. It wasn't about making headlines, it was about honoring the truth they'd lived every day. As Mario quipped with his trademark wit, "We've been together so long, we're practically antiques, but we're fierce antiques." Today, Jerry serves as the artistic director of Village Theater in Washington, while Mario continues to light up screens and stages nationwide. Their paths may diverge and reunite, but their love has never wavered. It's a testament to partnership, built not on fame, but on respect, creativity, and the kind of love that quietly, powerfully, stands the test of time. Alan and Grant Schaefer. Alan Cumming has never been one to fit into boxes. Whether lighting up Broadway in Cabaret, stealing scenes on The Good Wife, or challenging norms in indie films, he's always brought a fearless edge to his craft. That same boldness defines his personal life, especially his enduring love story with artist and illustrator Grant Schaefer, a man he didn't just marry once, but twice. Their story began in 2002, introduced by mutual friends in New York City. Grant, a gifted visual artist and storyboard professional in film and television, was instantly drawn to Alan's razor-sharp wit and electric Scottish charm. Alan, in turn, found in Grant a kindred spirit, quiet, grounded, and deeply creative. Their bond was quick, but never reckless. It grew steadily, rooted in honesty, mutual support, and a shared respect for individuality. In January 2007, they entered into a civil partnership in London. Exactly 5 years later, after same-sex marriage was legalized in the US, they tied the knot again, this time in New York. "I couldn't think of a better way to celebrate our love than getting married again," Alan wrote, his words a quiet declaration of pride and resilience. Their relationship has never been about the spotlight, but rather about normalizing same-sex love through everyday acts of tenderness and visibility. Whether showing up together at events, posting vacation photos, or sharing heartfelt tributes online, Alan and Grant lead with authenticity, not for publicity, but as a subtle form of cultural protest. Grant's illustrations, which have appeared in The New Yorker and The New York Times, often reflect their shared life. He also teaches art and advocates for animal rights. Meanwhile, Alan's activism spans LGBTQ+ rights, mental health, and political justice. Together, they split their time between Manhattan and their home in the Catskills, where they live with their beloved dogs and savor a life that balances public purpose with private peace. "We've built a home that feels like a retreat," Alan once said, "but also like a launch pad." It's a fitting metaphor for a couple whose love is both sanctuary and strength. A story not just of marriage, but of partnership, purpose, and quiet revolution. Zachary Quinto and Miles McMillan. Two artists, two hearts beating in sync, until they weren't. Zachary's rise to fame was meteoric, from the brooding villain Scylla in Heroes to the iconic Mr. Spock in Star Trek. But while his career soared, his personal life quietly blossomed in the background, especially when he began dating Miles McMillan, a striking model and gifted painter. Their love story began quietly in 2013, but by 2015, they had built a life together in New York. Stylish yet sincere, they quickly became one of the most admired couples in the creative world. Miles, with his graceful presence and artistic soul, mirrored Zachary's own depth and vision. Whether attending fashion shows, art exhibitions, or charity galas, they exuded elegance without ever seeming calculated. Despite Zachary publicly coming out in 2011, their romance was never a PR move, it was simply lived. No grand declarations. No overexposure. Just two men navigating love and ambition side by side. Through fleeting Instagram moments, fans caught glimpses of their world, sunlit vacations in Italy, cozy nights in with their dogs, shared birthdays that felt intimate and real. It was the kind of love that felt grounded, even while standing in the spotlight. But in early 2019, after more than 6 years together, their chapter came to a gentle close. No public scandal. No dramatic headlines. Just a quiet understanding that life had pulled them in different directions. Friends described the split as peaceful, a mutual decision marked by grace. Though their love didn't end in forever, it didn't need to. Some relationships aren't meant to last. They're meant to teach us, elevate us, and leave us better than they found us. And in that way, Zachary and Miles' story remains a rare and beautiful testament to queer love lived with integrity, warmth, and quiet strength. Ricky Martin and Juan Yosef, a love story that redefined what family means in Hollywood. Ricky Martin had already lived 1,000 lives in the spotlight, Latin pop icon, global sex symbol, humanitarian. Long before he ever revealed his most personal truth. When he came out in 2010, after years of speculation and inner turmoil, it wasn't just a declaration, it was a cultural breakthrough. One of the most recognizable faces in music stood tall and said, "I am a fortunate homosexual man." It was bold. It was history. 5 years later, something as simple as scrolling through Instagram changed his life again. That's where he discovered Juan Yosef, a London-based artist of Syrian and Swedish descent. What started as mutual admiration quickly turned into something deeper, more magnetic. Ricky later admitted it was he who slid into Juan's DMs, and never stopped talking to him since. They made their romance public in 2016, got engaged later that year, and quietly tied the knot in early 2018. But their relationship wasn't defined by flashing cameras or red carpets. It was in the life they built together, one loving step at a time. Ricky was already a devoted father to twin boys, Matteo and Valentino, born via surrogate in 2008. With Juan, they welcomed their daughter Lucia in December 2018, and their son Ren a year later. Together, they became more than just a couple. They became a symbol, a multicultural, same-sex family thriving with love and intention in a world still catching up to the meaning of true equality. Fans saw it unfold on Instagram: birthday cakes, bedtime snuggles, quiet dinners, and joyful chaos. It felt real. It felt possible. Then, in 2023, after 6 years of marriage, they announced their separation. There were no tabloids, no ugly headlines, just a heartfelt statement about choosing different paths while preserving peace and mutual respect. Our greatest desire is to continue having a healthy family dynamic and a relationship centered on peace and friendship, they wrote. Even in parting, Ricky and Juan remained graceful, united, and deeply human. Theirs wasn't just a Hollywood love story. It was a brave, beautiful journey, from silence to pride, from connection to family, from love to respect, that reminded the world what love can look like at its most authentic. Barry Manilow and Gary Keefe, a love song hidden in plain sight. Barry Manilow, the man whose music gave the world unforgettable ballads like Mandy, Could It Be Magic and Can't Smile Without You, spent decades serenading audiences with stories of love, while quietly living one of his own. Behind the curtain and away from the flashing lights, stood Gary Keefe, Barry's manager, confidant, business partner, and ultimately, the love of his life. They met in 1978 when Gary, then a successful television executive, stepped into Barry's orbit. What began as a professional partnership soon blossomed into something deeper, something unshakable. Gary became Barry's anchor through the chaos of fame, his silent strength during world tours, his steady hand through health scares, and his constant presence in the ever-changing world of showbiz. For nearly 4 decades, their love remained a sacred secret, shielded from the public eye. Then, in 2014, they quietly exchanged vows in an intimate ceremony at their Palm Springs home, surrounded only by their closest friends. The world wouldn't learn of their union until a year later, when the news finally broke. Barry, once fearful that revealing the truth might disappoint fans or derail his career, was met with an overwhelming wave of love and acceptance. "I didn't want to disappoint my fans," he later admitted. "But when they found out, they were so supportive, I was overwhelmed." What he feared would cost him everything instead gave him freedom. Freedom to live openly. To love loudly. To no longer hide. Today, Barry and Gary continue to live a life grounded in trust and quiet devotion, splitting their time between Palm Springs and New York. They still work side by side, still finishing each other's thoughts, still choosing each other every single day, just as they always have. Their story may not have filled tabloids, but it fills hearts. Because real love doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be true. And in this countdown, these 20 gay celebrity couples show us that love, real, enduring, unapologetic love, never goes out of style. If you noticed any errors or feel we missed something, don't hesitate to let us know. We're always here to grow, improve, and honor every story with the care it deserves. George Takei and Brad Altman, a love story that quietly changed history. For decades, George Takei was known to the world as Hikaru Sulu from Star Trek, but his most powerful role has always been off-screen, as a devoted partner to Brad Altman. Long before it was safe, long before the world was ready, George and Brad were building a life together. They met in the early 1980s through a Los Angeles running club, bonding over shared passions and a quiet strength that would carry them through decades of change. Back then, being openly gay could end a career, so they kept their love private, but never hidden. Behind the scenes, they built a home rooted in loyalty, laughter, and deep understanding. In 2005, when George bravely came out in protest of Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger's veto of California's same-sex marriage bill, he didn't just share his truth, he introduced the world to the man who had been by his side all along. From that moment, George and Brad became champions for marriage equality and LGBTQ+ rights. They used George's global platform not for fame, but to fight for dignity and justice. In 2008, they married at the Japanese American National Museum, just months before Proposition 8 passed, marking a milestone not just for them, but for history. Their wedding made headlines as they became the first legally married same-sex couple to appear on the cover of Frontiers magazine. But even as symbols, they've never chased the spotlight. Brad, ever the quiet force, continues to support George's relentless advocacy from behind the scenes, while George, with his signature wit and wisdom, speaks truth to power. Together, they've marched, spoken, and stood tall, side by side. Today, their love story stands as one of Hollywood's most enduring legends, not because of red carpets or scandal, but because of its courage, constancy, and quiet revolution. George and Brad didn't just live through history. They helped write it. Hoy ChatGPT. David Hyde Pierce and Brian Hargrove, a love that quietly defied the odds. Long before LGBTQ+ rights were part of everyday conversation, David Hyde Pierce was quietly living a life of quiet courage and deep devotion with television writer and producer Brian Hargrove. While the world knew David as the witty and lovable Niles Crane on Frasier, few knew that behind the scenes, he was building something far more meaningful. A love story rooted in trust, respect, and unwavering loyalty. Their journey began in the early 1980s, a time when being openly gay in Hollywood could end a career. But David and Brian chose to protect what they had, not out of fear or shame, but because it was sacred. For nearly 25 years, they stood by each other, weathering fame, industry shifts, and the changing tides of public opinion. In 2008, just days before Proposition 8 temporarily banned same-sex marriages in California, the couple seized a brief window of hope and legally tied the knot. David later reflected, "We got married in the brief window." It wasn't just a wedding, it was a quiet act of love and defiance. David officially came out in 2007 while accepting an award, casually mentioning the partner he'd shared his life with for 24 years. There were no press tours, no tabloid headlines, just an honest truth shared with quiet pride. Brian, known for his work on Titus and Wanda at Large, is a respected figure in the industry in his own right. In 2015, the couple combined their creative forces for the Broadway musical It Should Have Been You. Brian wrote it, David directed. It was a rare and beautiful blend of art and love, showing the world how seamlessly their partnership extended beyond the personal. Though they never had children, they've built a rich life filled with theater, advocacy, and generosity, especially in support of LGBTQ+ youth and the arts. What makes their love so remarkable isn't celebrity or spectacle. It's the endurance, the quiet strength, the choice to stay together through shifting laws, cultural battles, and private milestones. Their story isn't loud, but it's lasting. It's not about seeking applause, but about standing firm when no one's watching. And that might be the truest form of love. Did their story touch you? Or is there another couple you think should be on this list? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more untold love stories from the world of the famous.